I'm Nima Rajan. The big rigs have been rolling into downtown Ottawa as a planned anti-vaccine mandate protest swells in number and energy. Hundreds of vehicles and long-haul trucks continued their trek towards the nation's capital to demand an end to COVID-19 restrictions, including vaccine passports. While the atmosphere was festive on Friday, Ottawa police have called in reinforcements, as some who joined the convoy have threatened violence. Organizer Canada Unity is pushing a memorandum of understanding that demands the Governor-General and Senate force Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and provincial governments to eliminate all COVID-19 restrictions and vaccine mandates. Meanwhile, the executive director of the Atlantic Provinces Trucking Association is concerned about possible blockades at the New Brunswick boundaries with Nova Scotia and Quebec this weekend. That's as drivers show their support for the protest set for tomorrow on Parliament Hill. Hundreds of people waving signs and Canadian flags lined the Trans-Canada Highway and an overpass near Fredericton yesterday afternoon as a convoy of trucks from Atlantic Canada headed to Ottawa. This Saturday also marks the 5th anniversary of the deadly 2017 Quebec City mosque shooting. The leadership of the Islamic Center, where the tragedy occurred, is calling for a Canada-wide ban on handguns. They have sent letters to the federal and Quebec governments, urging all sides to make sure that any new gun control legislation is applied across the country. 6 Muslim men were gunned down shortly after concluding evening prayers on January 29, 2017. 5 others were wounded. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization is now recommending COVID-19 booster shots for teens with underlying health conditions and those who are at high risk of COVID-19 exposure. The new advice also extends to teens who live in congregate settings or racialized or marginalized communities that have been hard hit by COVID-19 infections. It comes as data shows the high rate of infection due to Omicron has resulted in more kids being admitted to hospital. Slightly more than 50% of 5 to 11-year-olds have at least their first dose of vaccine. This while 82% of teens 12 to 17 are fully vaccinated. The latest figures show more than 34% of Canada's 6,029 long-term care homes are experiencing a COVID-19 outbreak. That is twice as many homes as the second highest peak in long-term care outbreaks last January. While vaccines have helped protect residents from the same deadly toll during the first wave of the pandemic, the impact of the Omicron wave has still been profound. One expert says the latest wave has also renewed fears about restrictive isolation measures, and that research is beginning to show the heavy toll that prolonged isolation has taken on residents. Saskatchewan is revising its public health orders. This comes as it moves to treat the Omicron variant like other common respiratory viruses such as the flu. Starting today, close contacts of people who test positive will not be required to self-isolate. Anyone who is infected, immunized or not, will still need to self-isolate for 5 days. But the change eases the isolation requirement of 10 days for the unvaccinated. Health officials say Omicron is so transmissible that many people who have been able to dodge COVID-19 will get exposed. Environment Canada is warning a massive winter storm sweeping up the east coast of the United States could hit parts of the Maritimes with up to 40 centimeters of snow. Winter storm and rainfall warnings are in effect, and everyone is being urged to prepare for power outages after the storm blows in tomorrow. Winds are expected to gust up to 100 kilometers an hour. Industry Minister François-Philippe Champagne says the pending takeover of a Canadian lithium mining company by a Chinese state-owned company was subjected to a thorough national security review. He tells the Commons Industry Committee that the review was led by the Industry Department and national security and intelligence agencies. He also says critics don't understand the process required under the Investment Canada Act for reviewing all foreign investments. The Canadian Olympic Committee announced its full team on Friday. It is the third largest Winter Games contingent that the country has ever sent. Of the 215 athletes heading to China to compete, there are 106 who identify as female, which is the most ever in Canadian Winter Olympic history. Canada is bringing a delegation of around 600 people to the Games, including athletes, coaches, and staff. On Friday, the COC announced that 5 members of the delegation were in COVID-19 protocols. However, the COC didn't provide the names of those in those protocols. All right, stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break with our weekly cryptocurrency and digital asset update with Catherine Murray, the host of The Buck Stops Here. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Up next, we take a look at developments in the world of cryptocurrencies and digital assets with Catherine Murray, the host of The Buck Stops Here. All yours, Catherine.
Thank you, Nima. Hello, everyone, and welcome to your weekly crypto and digital asset update. I am Catherine Murray. Well, we are seeing Bitcoin as well as Ethereum try to find some stability today. They're up by about 2-3%, but we've got to see if that can hold because there has been just so much volatility and downward pressure in the overall cryptocurrency world over the past number of weeks. Importantly, though, volatility doesn't mean that it's going away. But stepping back, just taking stock in terms of where we're at, the total market cap of the top 50 digital assets now stands at $1.6 trillion. That is down from $3 trillion earlier. And of course, the high was back on November the 8th of 2021. So we certainly have seen a real pullback. Of course, Bitcoin is still the largest cryptocurrency in the world, accounting for about 41% of the overall market cap, Ethereum at 16%. The pullback that we've seen is really now being attributed to some of the macro catalysts, macro drivers. And in fact, Goldman Sachs really highlighting the tight correlation that is now occurring in the cryptocurrency world with the equity world. And of course, we've seen equities pull back on fears of interest rate hikes and inflation. That doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. And also, of course, when we think about why is the correlation happening, well, there are more large Wall Street traders entering the cryptocurrency and digital asset world. So that is also a reason as to why this might be happening. Now, in terms of headlines, there's absolutely no shortage. Once again this week, Facebook, they actually had a crypto venture looking to launch a digital coin back in 2019. It came under some significant regulatory scrutiny because there was a real fear that if they were able to have a digital currency of their own, that there would be an instant take on this in terms of a take up with the billions of users, that the scale was just going to be so quick. So it has faced regulatory scrutiny, and they are, in fact, selling it right now. Another interesting story that I'm hearing and seeing firsthand, but it was reported in the Wall Street Journal, is what's going on with these crypto kings. They are now the real estate industry's newest whales, buying real estate with their crypto winnings. And in fact, the CEO of the largest U.S. exchange bought a $133 million Bel Air estate. Developers are apparently looking to accept crypto payments, and you're also hearing about brokerage companies, real estate brokerage companies, looking to provide crypto seminars for their employees. On the regulatory front, important to point out that the IMF is urging El Salvador to strip Bitcoin as a legal currency. It's the only country in the world to give it legal status. El Salvador is looking for about $1.3 billion in a loan from the IMF. The IMF is saying that this is an obstacle when Bitcoin is a legal currency. So just one note there. Also, interestingly, there's, according to a Bloomberg report, it seems as though Putin is backing crypto as he backs a government proposal to tax and regulate the mining of crypto versus banning it completely. He's also apparently gone on to say, again, this is a Bloomberg report, that they have a competitive advantage because they have a surplus of electricity and also talent. Also interesting to note that from a regulatory perspective, one of the crypto products out there are interest bearing, and the SEC is reportedly examining this to see whether or not they're unregistered securities. Also in Canada, Mike Katchen, he's the CEO and co-founder of Wealthsimple. He's out saying that Canadian regulators should work to make our country, Canada, a hub for crypto and blockchain companies. And lastly, you may have seen on Twitter, or maybe not, that Elon Musk tweeted that he would eat a McDonald's Happy Meal on television if McDonald's would accept Dogecoin as payment. Now, recall Tesla just accepted Dogecoin for payment recently. Now, McDonald's apparently retweeted or did retweet that they would accept it, but only if Tesla accepts Grimace coin. Nima, I'll leave it there. Back to you.
Always a lot to consider, Catherine. Thanks for that. For more analysis and news on the markets, tune in to Catherine Murray on The Buck Stops Here. All right, well, meanwhile, UniCredit CEO Andrea Orcel says the Italian bank has decided not to pursue a possible takeover bid for Russian bank Otkriti. This due to rising tensions over Ukraine. UniCredit had started due diligence on an offer, but Mr. Orcel said that given the geopolitical environment, they decided to withdraw. UniCredit operates the AO UniCredit Bank in Russia, which is the 12th bank in the country with 70 branches and 400 employees. Stay with us. We'll be back with a look at gas prices across the country with GasWizard.ca's senior petroleum analyst Dan McTeague. Welcome back to Forum Daily. Now it's time for our weekly look at energy prices in Canada with Dan McTeague, Senior Petroleum Analyst at GasWizard.ca. All yours, Dan.
Well, Nima, thank you very much for that. And wow, what a time. We're now in many parts of Canada testing and passing all-time record prices for gasoline. Well, you heard it right here in the forum. We talked about this many times, that this would, in fact, be a likely outcome, and that we would see prices marching on an average to $1.60 to $1.65, which means, of course, Ontario, Quebec would have to start to see prices pushing well towards the mid-150s. Looks like we're going to get our wish, especially those who want higher gas prices. And that would be those who've been pushing the climate agenda and pushing carbon taxes, as well as proposing new carbon taxes like the Clean Fuel Standard, as well as regulations to choke off investments in the oil and gas sector. The practical effect of that, by the way, is to drive down the value of the loonie, of the Canadian dollar. Why is that important? Well, think of it this way. It takes 127, 128 pennies to buy a US dollar. Last time we saw oil at $88 a barrel for West Texas Intermediate back in October of 2014, it took about 110 pennies. What's 17 cents, you say? An additional 10 cents on a liter of gasoline. So not only do you have an inflationary effect that no one wants to talk about, including economists, you now have a circumstance where on top of 10-cent plus carbon taxes increasing, the Clean Fuel Standard, which will be a new carbon tax at the end of the year, which we'll call the second carbon tax. You now have the real effects of environmental, social, and governance taxes, which are leading to a much weaker Canadian dollar, and as a result, destroying the purchasing power of every single Canadian. I'm going to be speaking to the House of Commons Finance Committee in about a week or so to talk about that point, because I think everyone's tiptoeing around it, but I don't have the luxury of doing that, especially when I'm predicting gas prices. And as a Liberal member of Parliament, I spent a considerable amount of time trying to find ways to help Canadians, not just in terms of predicting gas prices, but also, more importantly, getting them energy rebates, which I did in 2000 and 2002. It's a different day, but I think more and more Canadians are starting to pay attention. And they are, because if you look at Newfoundland's prices, $1.63 for a liter of gasoline, Quebec $1.61, 62, Ontario pushing to $1.54 by Sunday. The West is quiet right now. So that's Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, all in the 136 to 139 range. But I would expect a net increase there of 5 cents a liter sometime between now and next Tuesday. So brace for it. It's coming. It's only so long gas stations can hold off. The BC interior, look for many places like Kamloops, Kelowna, Prince George to push towards $1.59.9, call it what it is, $1.60 a liter, with, of course, Vancouver still holding out at $1.68, $1.70 a liter. What this really means, though, is not just gasoline, but diesel is also going up, and so is the price of natural gas. And much of this directly related to the fact that we have choked off the ability for many producers to do what they do best. And that's to produce more oil and natural gas, blocking pipelines, or having the president of the United States shut down a virtually built Keystone pipeline, which could have helped address the United States in its 1.5 million barrel a day shortfall. Yes, you heard me correctly. The United States pre-pandemic used to produce 13.1 million barrels of its own domestic oil a day. Right now, 11.6 million barrels. Guess where they're having to make up the difference? It can't be Canada, because we don't have pipelines to get it to the largest market in the world. They're actually having to get some of their product from Russia, which brings us, of course, into the geopolitical factor. The fight between Ukraine and Russia, should it become a war, isn't just about two countries. It's now about Europe. And having gone the route of denying, coal, oil, and natural gas, they now find themselves in the position of being vulnerable to whatever dictates Vladimir Putin can conjure up. It really means that the world has become geopolitically unstable as a result of our, quick, dramatic, and short-sighted pursuit of green energy. At the same time, it's also creating a circumstance where not many others are going to be able to come to the rescue of regions of the world that need more energy, not less. So this really is a time of awakening. I expect that right across Canada, Nima, we're going to be looking at an increase on the average of 3 or 4 cents a liter. Of course, things could come back a little bit if suddenly there's a resolution between Russia and Ukraine. That would be very helpful. We pray for that. But in the unlikely event that isn't happening, this is the first of many weeks where the national average in this country will be going up another 15 cents a litre towards $1.65, even for places like Ontario. Well, that's it for this week's energy review and prediction. We'll see you next week. Again, thanks for having me, Nima. Back to you.
Some not so good news for our wallets, Dan. Thanks for that. That was Dan McTeague, Senior Petroleum Analyst at GasWizard.ca. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with news from around the world on Forum Daily. So stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Moscow doesn't want a war over Ukraine, but it won't let its interests be, quote, rudely trampled on and ignored. President Joe Biden warned Ukraine's president yesterday that the U.S. believes there is a high degree of likelihood that Russia could invade. This when the ground freezes and Russian forces could attack Ukrainian territory from north of Kyiv. The U.S. has rejected Russia's demand that NATO promise Ukraine would never be part of the organization and that the alliance roll back troop deployments in Eastern Europe, which is something the Kremlin says leaves little ground for optimism. An urban search and rescue team is looking for possible victims after a 2-lane bridge collapsed in Pittsburgh this morning. Some rescuers rappelled down about 46 meters, while others formed a human chain to help rescue people aboard a 2-part bus that was on the bridge at the time. Most of the 10 people who were evaluated for injuries were first responders checked for exhaustion or because of the cold and snowy weather. But 3 people were taken to hospitals. The bridge collapsed hours before U.S. President Joe Biden heads to Pittsburgh to promote his $1 trillion infrastructure bill, which includes bridge maintenance. West Africa's regional bloc has suspended Burkina Faso's membership in the aftermath of this week's military coup. ECOWAS took the action Friday at a special meeting held online to discuss the crisis. Burkina Faso becomes the 3rd country in the 15-nation bloc to be suspended in just 18 months' time. ECOWAS already has suspended Mali and Guinea, both of which were taken over by military juntas as well. A measure of prices that is closely tracked by the Federal Reserve rose 5.8% last year. This is the sharpest increase since 1982 and comes as fast consumer spending collided with tight supply chains to raise the costs of food, furniture, appliances, and other goods. The report on Friday from the Commerce Department also said that consumer spending fell 0.6% in December. A wave of Omicron cases discouraged many Americans from traveling, eating out, or visiting theaters and other entertainment venues. At the same time, incomes rose 0.3% last month, providing fuel for future spending. Argentina says it has reached an agreement with the International Monetary Fund to refinance more than $40 billion in debt. Since 2020, Argentina has been in a difficult negotiation with the IMF to refinance the debt contracted in 2018. This was during the government of conservative Mauricio Macri in the midst of a currency crisis. Argentina had spent 3 years trying to renegotiate repayment terms with the IMF, and it considered a deal vital to stabilizing the economy. The United Nations World Food Programme says more than 1/3 of the people in Ethiopia's blockaded Tigray region are suffering an extreme lack of food. The WFP said in a report released Friday that families are exhausting all means to feed themselves. This with 3/4 of the population using extreme coping strategies to survive. The report noted increases in begging and eating just one meal a day. Rwandan authorities say they will reopen the border with Uganda, ending nearly 3 years of a standoff that appeared to hurt both countries' economies and raised fears of armed hostilities. The announcement comes after a period of quiet diplomacy, during which Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni dispatched envoys to negotiate with his Rwandan counterpart, Paul Kagame. The border will officially reopen on Monday. Rwanda's government says it committed to working on outstanding issues. 6 men in their 20s are on trial in Dresden, Germany, over the 2019 theft of more than $126 million worth of 18th century treasures from the Green Vault Museum. And the stolen jewelry has not been recovered. 2 of the men were convicted in 2020 of stealing a $4.1 million 100-kilogram Canadian gold coin, dubbed the Big Maple Leaf, from Berlin's Bode Museum in 2017. Tiger King Joe Exotic has been resentenced to 21 years in prison. His real name is Joseph Maldonado Passage, and he's now in federal prison after a jury convicted him in a murder-for-hire plot involving his chief rival, Carol Baskin. Joe Exotic was sentenced to 22 years in prison 2 years ago, but an appeals court ruled last year that the proper sentencing range might be up to 5 years less. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time on Forum Daily News, and have a great weekend.